The last time these two teams faced off was last year and Ukraine had the edge. They need to take it once more to confirm their safety in this group. I am Hubba, and joining me on the cast is iFlame for Kazakhstan versus Ukraine. How are you feeling about the matchup?
Oh, I am so excited. This one shaping up to be a good one. As you mentioned, Ukraine took this matchup decidedly the last time these two teams faced off, but the fortunes, it seems, have been swapped this time around. Kazakhstan, the slightly higher seed, and they have been absolutely tearing up this group. They beat Portugal 5-3, and they just beat Peru 5-1 as well, which makes 2 wins for them in the group. So let's talk about this group situation. If Kazakhstan wins this match, they're going to be up 3-0 in the group, and that will guarantee them first seed. If Kazakhstan do not win this match, they still have a good shot at first seed, but regardless, they're guaranteed to go through at least top 2. For Ukraine, they can lose this match and still make it through the groups, with Kazakhstan going 3-0. The other 3 teams at 1 and 2, but they have to have at the very least a close match. If, let's say, Ukraine goes 0-5, gets swept, then the odds of them making up the point differential are basically none. But their odds are never going to be 0 because they do still have to play Peru, another team that is now 1-1. So let's talk about these rosters. Kazakhstan, they've had the star player Bika Menchik, who's been absolutely popping off for them, was 14th individual in qualifiers and has just continued to shine throughout the group stage. Had a nearly 2 match cost in their first match against Portugal. Ukraine, one of the most balanced performances I've ever seen, especially in their match against Portugal, where they had 4 different players at 1.4 match cost. What about pick bans, Hubba? What are we thinking?
Yeah, this is a tricky one to call with regards to pick bans. I mean, both Kazakhstan and Ukraine, their standout performances are going to be on those raw mechanics and the hidden. So it's kind of in between whether or not Ukraine wants to ban out some of this reading. Nomad 3, a standout performance from Kazakhstan in their previous match, beating out Peru and more notably Arnold with a very strong backing reading roster in that previous match just a few moments ago. So Ukraine, fresh on the mind for them. I would not be surprised to see that Nomad 3 fall to the wayside as their ban. And as for Kazakhstan on Ukraine's side, something like maybe a DT2, the one that's a little bit more skill cap. You want to get that out of the way as you do have the more skill cap oriented players on that Ukraine side.
It is interesting. They did have a fair bit of overlap in their picks. I think both teams actually did end up picking that DT2 as well as the Nomad 3 in their respective matches, but Kazakhstan has looked so good on these rating maps. I'm curious if we see the Hidden 2 banned out. Both of these teams had the Hidden 2s banned out against them in their matches versus Portugal, and I think Kazakhstan may very well just would love to have that open. Other maps, that Nomad 1 has been a very unpopular pick, but it's a skill set that has looked quite good for Kazakhstan, although I would be pretty surprised to see them pick it here.
Yeah, and second ban for Ukraine. Very smart. You always want to see second ban with a match where the skill sets are so closely aligned. Kazakhstan opting for first pick, which generally you do see the higher seeded teams pick, because by the time tiebreaker comes around, you do have the pick advantage, the final map prior to that potential tiebreaker. So first pick, very common for higher seeded teams, as Kazakhstan is showing here, and Fremont 2 being that first ban for Kazakhstan, getting rid of that raw flow aim.
Very smart. Hidden 2 banned out by Ukraine, pretty much as we expected. Of course, that does leave the other rating pick, Chocolate Disco, in that Nomad 3, available for Kazakhstan. As you mentioned, not only did they look at it on their last match, but they popped off on that in their first match as well. They had one of the top scores across the tournament on that Nomad 3, so I think that's very likely to be their first pick. But while we wait for the first pick, we do also have Uruguay versus Belgium going on the B stream. That should be a decent matchup. And a very quick reminder, if you want to show support for your favorite teams, go get your banners in the OSU shop. And if your team wins the World Cup, you get to keep your banner for the rest of the year. But I mean, because Kazakhstan has played 2 matches now, Ukraine does have a lot of information to work with, and the head-to-head is very interesting. There's a ton of maps where Kazakhstan have Ukraine beat out by about 200, 300k, which is enough to say that Kazakhstan probably has a slight advantage on the maps, but it's not enough that Kazakhstan couldn't, low roll a bit. Ukraine couldn't get a bit of an overperformance and take those break points. So we're going to get Nomad 3 Chocolate Disco. Of course, this is going to be your CS5 AR7 rating map. Lots of rhythmic aim, fair bit of doubles, lots of overlap as well. And Kazakhstan have a couple of scores on this one over 3 million points. With they've had Ternafis and Kamenchik both put up SCs on the map, and they're going to look to do it again.
Yeah, I mean, this Kazakhstan core roster has really wrapped around those 2 players, Kamenchik and Ternafis. Ternafis initially known on the scene as a reading specialist, so this one going to be the bread and butter for them, as well as some of these newer players. Zero Ice, not one of the newer ones, but Shuma 3UMA for Kazakhstan. One of those standout players, was the 4WC captain this year for Team Kazakhstan, so looking quite strong so far in their OWC debuts as the Kazakh rookie. But Ukraine, no slouch on these reading picks. As you mentioned, a lot of the maps between these 2 teams very close together within the margin of error. So this is going to be a very interesting match. I anticipate many breakpoints.
Yeah, I don't think the breakpoint is going to be likely on this Nomad 3. Ukraine, they have played this as well, and they put up closer to 2 million. Wasn't a great score from them, but we are going to get Ethema in for Ukraine, one of their go-to rating players.
Yeah, Ukraine roster in the lobby. This is one of those wider margins for sure. Kazakhstan more specialty on this reading map in comparison to the Hidden 2, which Ukraine is a little bit more aligned with, which is why it's a little surprising to see Ukraine be the ones to ban that pick in comparison to this one. So, but maybe expecting some improvements. Of course, this is the second weekend of the tournament. Maybe that extra week of practice going to pay a little bit of dividends on this head-to-head.
Yep, as a reminder, these 2 teams are in the contenders group. So the top 2 teams advance to the lowest bracket of round of 16. The bottom 2 teams are eliminated. So Ukraine playing for their tournament lives right now. Any point will help. Even if you don't end up winning the match, you need to keep that that point differential strong so that you can potentially beat out Peru in that final matchup. But here we go into Chocolate Disco. We have heard this one played so many times. It's been one of the most picked maps, unsurprisingly, because teams prefer to ban out that Hidden 2, which always leaves the Nomad 3 open for the rating team. Both teams going to get off to a relatively strong start, as you don't expect to see many early misses, at least in the first quarter of the map.
Yeah, patterns a little bit simpler in this top half. Most of the stack rhythms are going to be coming towards that first key eye, but initial break from Kotsik going to be giving Kazakhstan a slight advantage during these cut double sections. Accuracy advantage also firmly their way, but this is a little bit of a longer one for this pool. Nearly 4 minutes of 4-star overlap action, so really testing a lot of things here. With regards to overlap reading and, I mean, even patience for some of these players. I mean, the skill cap is going to be brimming for a team like Ukraine, and having to play a map like this does add a unique secondary difficulty, as you do see the second break come through for Epina.
Yep, should be plenty of time to recover, but Kazakhstan do finally trade that 1 break back. So it's going to be 3 FCs to 2 in favor of Kazakhstan, but Kotsik finds yet another miss, not having the best time on this map, and accuracy is quite a bit lower for Ukraine, as well as Pema finds yet another miss. So there's not going to be much support for these full combos on the side of Ukraine, but as long as they do hold on to the FCs, they're still going to be very much in this one. Score lead 170k and growing, but on a map like this, if we see those FCs for Kazakhstan drop, Ukraine could storm right back into this one.
Yeah, it just needs a little bit of falter on the Kazakh side, but it's just not happening. The triple 99% and another break to come through on Ukraine. Unfortunately, Bolner to fall over. It's Poma alone now on the Seoul FC, and even that falls. Oh no, it's my first curse of the OWC for Boma when they did not need it, and this is gonna be a dog walk from here on out. Kamenchik, Turnipfish, Shiumi, no problems for them.
Yeah, Turnipfish does find the miss, but this is absolutely the kind of map, because of the lower SR, the kind of map you can be incredibly consistent on if you've taken the time to practice it. And of course, these two teams have had 2 weeks now to practice this pool, and so they've had more than enough time to practice maps like the Nomad 3, and Kazakhstan are looking good on this one once again, now pushing 2 million score and looking to take their first point pretty decisively. You know they're going to be determined to secure themselves first place overall in this group, and they are well on their way there with this first pick. It's going to be a couple more misses from Ukraine to kind of put salt in the wound, and it's Kamenchik, Shiumi still holding those full combos. We might see another double FC from Kazakhstan.
Yeah, very on-brand scoreline for Kazakhstan on this Nomad 3. Been a strong early pick for them time and time again. Shiumi, Kamenchik to close it out. We will have to see if they can bring it over this 3 million mark as well. Zero Ice on that recovery combo. Turnipfish right behind. Unfortunately, not to be the double FC, but 3 million score breached. And a very strong start for Kazakhstan.
Yep. Repeating their previous scores, Ukraine, that was an expected loss. I think pretty much every matchup teams have a couple picks where you expect to lose, so they're not going to be too upset about that one, but it is incredibly important that they have a strong first pick here. They don't want to fall too far behind, and they do have some decent options. Unfortunately, that free mod 2, which they would have loved to pick, was banned out. Other maps, Hidden 1, Ukraine looked incredibly good on, as well as the No Mod 2, but I think Ukraine has a lot less guaranteed picks compared to Kazakhstan. The head-to-heads were a lot closer. They picked previously things like DT2 as well as the Nomad 2, so lots of tapping focused maps, but Kazakhstan looked incredibly strong on the tapping as well, that DT2. I think they were 100,000 points apart, in fact, on the DT2, so I think, once we get past the rating picks and Ukraine's first couple of picks, as you mentioned earlier, Heba, we have the potential for a ton of breakpoints just because of how close this matchup is.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're Ukraine, I almost feel like you want to sort of dip into some new comfort avenues. Maybe some of the aim in this pool, something to look out for, specifically free mod aim. Something like the free mod 3 could be an interesting pick for Ukraine. Some high BPM consistency. You get to have some comfort mods on your side. You get to play around with your hidden players while maintaining a slight mechanics pick. Could be an interesting play if you're just trying to avoid some maps that Kazakhstan are strong on, like the DT2, but I mean, if you know what's good for you, you stick with it, and DT2 gonna remain the pick nevertheless.
Yep. I do like this. Ukraine sticking with what works. They've seen Kazakhstan's scores on this one, but they just put up 3.5 million points on the DT2 in their last match. And this DT2 is one of the easier maps in the pool by a long shot. We've seen a couple 4-way FCs on the map, one from Brazil, I believe one from Chile as well. And so if you're going to pick this DT2, you need to be confident that you can put up at least 2 FCs, likely 3 in a matchup like this one. And so the nerves are going to be a big factor here, because all it takes is that one unlucky miss to swing the map in your favor. Of course, this one is going to be 255 BPM with a lot of incredibly dense bursts.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the trickiness in this map is just going to come down to the later stages. I mean, your stamina holding up for this long on this map is just an onslaught. I believe around 1800 combo to FC of straight 250 strings. So really tough ask here, and it's no mistake that Ukraine picked this map before Nomad 2. You have longer streams, you have higher BPM, it all really plays into the skill cap nature of that. Roman and No One Loves being some notable players for these kinds of maps for the Ukraine side.
Yeah, interestingly, we're not going to be seeing my Angel Rasuru in for Kazakhstan, who did play this on their first go around. For Ukraine, we do have the expected roster. No One Loves Caustic, Crimea, and Roman. And it's going to be good luck, have fun in the chat. So Kazakhstan changing up their lineup a little bit. We'll see if it pays off for them.
Yeah, some more familiar faces. Surprising switch up given that, I mean, the two notable tapping maps in this pool being the Nomad 2 and this DT2. My Angel Rasuru was the top score for Kazakhstan on that Nomad 2 just in the previous matchup, so maybe a little bit of discomfort with the BPM jump of this map by comparison. Revexy going to be finding an early slider break, but again, this is the longer of the two maps, so plenty of map to go, as well as some of these accuracy drops from the Ukraine side, a little uncharacteristic around the 95 for Kodsek to be built up.
Now, I do believe, if my math is correct, if Ukraine gets swept by Kazakhstan here, then I don't think they'll be able to actually make it out of the group. They just won't be able to make up the point differential. And so it is vital for Ukraine to get a point on the board. I'm sure the players have done the math as well. And once they get that first point, they'll at least have a chance against Peru, and so they'll be able to breathe a sigh of relief. But we've got a couple misses early on. Revexe, it's Zero Ice, as well as No One Loves and Crimea. It's going to be 2 FCs to 2, but both teams are going to need to hold on to these FCs because we've talked about this map being relatively easy, and already surprising to see some players drop. I do think we're going to see some recoveries, but this one's still anybody's game.
Yeah, hopping into one of these finger control sections, a little bit of hexagonal aim and those triples ever so shaky. You're looking at some of these players, you're seeing the little shakes, but still no further breaks. It's a constant buildup from here on out. You're only looking at the accuracy difference. No One Loves finding the double break now for Team Ukraine, but on the FC you see Kotsik, and it's a 95 FC still being held. Roman on the 98, but Crimea to fall, and Kazakhstan really running away with this as a potential break point.
Yeah, Ukraine just doesn't quite have the support into this solo section. This is one of the harder parts of the map. We need to see Ukraine hold all their FCs from this point forward, but there's one from Revexe on Kazakhstan. That's going to slow the bleeding a little bit, but it's still 300,000 points in favor of Kazakhstan. Ukraine's going to need a couple of mercies, but it's No One Loves. Turnifish trading. Now it's going to be 2 FCs to 2. No, it was a, looks like Boncho missed for Kostik. And it's 2 misses now for Kazakhstan, but they still hold on to their 2 big combos. I just don't think it's going to be enough for Ukraine, and it looks like they are going to be giving up a break point on their first pick.
Yeah, Zero Eyes putting in the work for that supporting combo. Turnifis holding for as long as they could. Kamen Sheik, though, the man to look out for. You see that accuracy difference, and you know it means business. 99.5, just about, on that DT2. What a standout accuracy from the #1 Kazakhstan player.
Yeah, very impressive stuff, and definitely a bit of an underperformance from Ukraine, not matching their previous DT2 score, but to be fair, Kazakhstan had that one beat as well. And they've got the next pick. Of course, they don't have any kind of guaranteed rating left in the pool with that hidden 2 banned out. The Nomad 3 now picked, but they does still feel like they have some incredibly strong pick options. I think the Nomad 4 is something that could look incredibly good for Kazakhstan, something they put up some strong scores on. The Nomad 5 as well, actually, they had a decent score advantage over Ukraine on, but beyond that, I think we could possibly see something like the Free Mod 1. They had some really strong scores on as well, so those are kind of the 3 areas that I'm personally looking at.
Yeah, normally as the higher seeded team, I mean, these seeds are really close, but in general, you would like to look for the most volatile maps in your pool, and Fremod 1 certainly fits that bill, if not some of these hard rock picks. I mean, you're looking for contested skill sets between these teams. Ukraine is kind of forced to pick what they're a little more comfortable with, whereas by comparison, Kazakhstan has a little bit more versatility on their side to maybe pick into a hard rock 1 here using Kamen Sheik, Zero Ice, and Shuma as their main core.
Certainly, and Ukraine has really struggled with the precision pretty much all tournament. They had the 35th best score on Hard Rock 2 in the qualifiers. Then you come into the group stage. They banned Hard Rock 2 in their previous match, and I don't believe they did play the No Mod 5, put up 1.9 million on it, but Kazakhstan, they're going to play Letter to the Black World. It is going to be our Precision No Mod. This one's going to be CS 7.4 Snap Precision, another map that Kazakhstan looked really good on, 2.2 million for themselves, and we should see those three that you mentioned coming in for Kazakhstan. For Ukraine, they don't really have dedicated precision players, unfortunately. Likely, we're just going to see Balner, No One Loves, Dench, and Crimea.
Yeah, standard roster here for the Ukraine side. This is, on paper, unless we see some improvements, another pretty strong pick from Kazakhstan. Ukraine kind of hovered around one of the bottom scores for the weekend in the one time that they played this map. So, I mean, Kamenchik, Turnifus, those two players look so consistent on every map. If they do as anticipated for a map like this in comparison to the somewhat lacking precision of Ukraine, it should be a quite strong pick.
Yeah, I think the nerves not going to be helping Ukraine either. For Kazakhstan, you can kind of breathe easy, right? You know you're through the group no matter what. You're just playing for first versus second place. And honestly, even if Kazakhstan do end up losing this match, they've got a pretty good shot at first just based off point differential. So you don't have too much stress coming into this match. For Ukraine, on the other hand, if they don't win, any of the three teams still have a chance at getting through the group. So the pressure is on for them, and the nerves hurt most on these precision maps, especially CS 7.4, which is a skill set that not a lot of players really practice.
Yeah, it's a tough one to be consistent on. So, I mean, it really comes down to players that consistently play tournaments are going to be having less nerves on this. And for this Ukraine side, I mean, these are players that, while they have the skill cap on their side, it's very rare that you see some of these names in some international tournaments. Whereas, by comparison, Turnifus, I mean, I felt like I commentated a tournament with Turnifus in it every other week, you know? So there's going to be a little bit less nerve edge on some players like that.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, there are quite a few veterans on both sides. I think Ukraine, their only new players this year are No One Loves and Aptum. Everybody else is a returning player, and they're quite experienced playing against higher seeds, especially in Odolocino. Ukraine has had a bit of a history the last couple of years of upsetting some bigger seeds. This time around, it was them who found themselves upset by Team Portugal. So now they're looking to do the same to Kazakhstan, but have given up their first break point, and unless they can pull out some magic on this No Mod 5, could very well find themselves down by 3. It is going to be Poma or Roman with the first miss of the match, quickly followed off by Apema and No One Loves. It is a complete disaster early on for Ukraine, and this is not a long map, Hubba. Kazakhstan are going to storm into the lead, and they're still holding 4 FC strong. There goes the last FC for Ukraine, and it is pure domination from Kazakhstan.
And this is a map that really accelerates in difficulty as it continues while being short, while being a volatile skill set. I mean, the CS 7.4 precision, no slouch, but the second, or the final third of this map is going to be the hardest part. You're going to be seeing a lot of breaks here. Ukraine has to hold onto everything they can, and it's just going to be so tough so long as Kamenchik and Shuma hold on to these FCs. 99.6 for Kamenchik, still being held on is no slouch for the number 1 Kazakhstan player. I mean, this has to be match cost farming at this point. What an unbelievable performance here on this map.
Yeah, Kamenchik has been, shouldn't have said anything as Kamenchik does find the miss, but I mean, Kazakhstan has done more than enough to close this one out. They're going to be up 3-0, and they're going to feel incredibly confident. Ukraine now, they've got to win every one of their own picks, and they're going to have to find one of Kazakhstan's picks. They're quickly running out of time, and I do have to correct myself a little bit. If Ukraine does get swept here, I believe they can still make it out of the group stage in second place if they sweep Peru later. But Peru has had some pretty good scores themselves. They've got some strong players, and so that would be quite the tall order as Ukraine now have to look for their next pick. And I'm curious to see if they stick with their strategy of focusing on the tapping, if they want to go back to something like that Nomad 2. I do think that would be a little bit risky for them, but kind of every pick feels risky for Ukraine. I think that hidden one might look slightly better, although Kazakhstan did just put up a really good score on that in their last match. So all of a sudden, that's you're going to be a lot less confident in that hidden one as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to the versatility of this Kazakhstan roster this year. I mean, last year they were a little bit more like you knew what to expect out of them, but now they're picking stuff like Nomad 5, which is skill sets relatively untapped in tournament otherwise, and performing even on that. But Ukraine looking to take a page out of Peru's book. Peru getting their sole point on this Nomad 4 against Kazakhstan in the previous match. Granted, that was with a quad FC, but Ukraine looking to match that. Historically, a pretty solid tech team as well for the Ukraine side.
Yeah, it's going to be Heliosphere, this slider tech pick, and this one certainly makes sense. Ukraine looked good on the Nomad 4 in qualifying. They're 15th overall, but they know Kazakhstan's score as well on this map. It was played earlier, and they got 2.7 and 2.5 million respectively in their two matches. Kamenchik does have an FC on this one, so I think if you're Ukraine, if you're picking this, you have to be confident that you have at least one FC on the map, and you have to be confident that as a team, you can beat that 2.5 million score mark. We're likely going to see pretty similar rosters on both teams. Looks like Revekse is coming in for the Nomad 4, but Kamenchik and Turnifus are going to be in for pretty much everything, as well as Shiumi does play pretty much everything generally. Ukraine, of course, No One Loves and Dench tend to be their core, and then Pema and Ballner are in for support.
Yeah, really solid roster here. And I mean, there was a little bit of fourth man syndrome on this pick prior from Kazakhstan. Shuma dropped a 363k, so I'm curious. We've already seen one roster switch in this matchup from last for Kazakhstan. We'll have to see if that remains the same, if they use that versatility to their advantage again, try swapping out one of these members. We do see fourth player for each of these teams still to be determined as the time winds down, so it should be an interesting pick here. Roman hopping in, rounding out that core. It's just all eyes on Kazakhstan to see what they do here. It is going to be a roster switch. Shiumi hopping in place of Shuma this time around. We just saw Shiumi pull out one of those near FCs on the Nomad 3. So should be performing well today. Should be a solid switch up for the Kazakhstan side. And once again, their versatility shows true. And we'll have to see if it's going to be enough to maintain the point this time around, keep up that momentum against a Ukraine who really wants to get their one on the board.
Yeah, I certainly like the swap. And as you said, Hubba, a point for Ukraine here is absolutely vital. Every single point you get on the board just helps that point differential and makes your matchup against Peru a little bit less stressful. Any point will be massive for them in their chances of getting out of the group. We do see an early miss from Revekse, and this is a relatively short map, so that miss could matter because it is a big accuracy drop, but it's quickly going to be traded back by No One Loves, and we should get a pretty even start to this match. It is relatively easy to get into a slightly burstier section a third of the way into the map, and that is where we tend to see a few more accuracy drops, but for now, just going to be 3 FCs to 3. Accuracies, though, decently in favor of Kazakhstan. If they've got 2 players at 97, Kamenchik at 96, and even Revekse is starting to recover that accuracy now. And here we go into the slightly burstier section. We'll see whether all these players can hold on to their combos. Ukraine need this point desperately.
Yeah, so far, most recent break coming from Revekse will build up over time, but Ballner a little bit of an under him on that slider, and you see a little cursor dance there. Doesn't want to get a little tilted on this map. I mean, mind block on something like this, you're down 3-0. Momentum on Kazakhstan's side is always a heartbreaking thing to witness, and still pulling through with the combos now is Kazakhstan. All eyes on them to continue forward. They need some breaks if you are a Ukraine member. Now that break showed up at the most inopportune time because now you know you have to hold Xiaomi and Revexi both to trade, giving Ukraine a little bit of an opening here in our second third.
Yeah, this is the hardest section of the map. It's going to be pressured. There goes an FC gone for Ukraine. Now, Kamenchik and Turnifish just need to hold for another 15 seconds, and they should be able to close this one out. But Ukraine still have those combos ready to capitalize on any mistakes from Kazakhstan. The support, though, does favor Ukraine slightly with Ballner. They just need a little bit more, 130,000 points. They can still bring this one back, but they need the misses now. There goes Revexe, but that was, it was a Boncho miss. No miss for Revexe, and it looks like Kazakhstan are going to be able to close this one out. This is a relatively easy ending of the map, and barring any complete meltdowns, it is going to be a miss from Xiaomi. I just don't know that it's enough. The score lead is going back over, but is there time, Hubba? Ukraine cannot afford a single drop at this point, and even then, it looks like their time has run out on Heliosphere.
It's the dream duo again, Turnifis and Kamenchik. On all those skill sets where they may not be as well rounded, you can always count on the duo to get it done. Double FC once more for Kazakhstan. And I mean, even if they just had one of those FCs on the Ukraine side, it would have been enough with the supporting scores, but unable to close it out, a little too much nerves, a little bit too much shakiness towards the tail end of that map, and unable to close it out is Ukraine, as Kazakhstan streaking to a match point now, and the chip on their shoulder paying off after last year's 5-1 loss to Ukraine, looking to serve up the same dish.
Certainly getting their revenge here against Ukraine, and Kazakhstan showing us that they are the kings of Group G, absolutely tearing through this group. And Hubba, they still have that Hard Rock 2 open show-off showdown. It's their last precision pick on the map, and we know Ukraine has struggled so much with precision really throughout this tournament. Struggled on it in qualifiers, banned it out in their previous match against Portugal. Seems like the obvious pick for Kazakhstan, and it feels heavily Kazakhstan favored. They've already played the map, put up 2.4 million, which is certainly a reasonable enough score that I feel like they should be confident going for that Hard Rock 2. And Ukraine, while they're not out of this group officially, if they lose their next map, it's certainly going to be very, very difficult for them, because they're going to need a sweep against Peru, and that is much easier said than done. Peru, they actually beat Portugal 5-3, took a point off Kazakhstan as well, so they are no slouches. We're going to get Nomad 2 instead, the most picked map of the group stage, very popular.
And I mean, it's easy to see why. It's a roll pan custom in OWC again. I mean, that guy always cooks up some good maps for the World Cup. And gonna be doing it once again with this Nomad 2 230 BPM long burst and finger control map. I mean, and this is just, I feel like a little bit rubbing salt in the wound for Kazakhstan here. I mean, this is another one of those overlapping skill sets. Kazakhstan got their first breakpoint on that DT2 and are looking to do it again here on the Nomad 2.
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit surprising, I must say, because Kazakhstan, I think, had the worst score when they both played it on the Nomad 2, but only by about 200k, so it was incredibly close, but feels like a slightly unnecessary risk. Now, to be honest, Kazakhstan, they don't mind going for riskier picks. At this point, I think now that they've secured 4 points, even if they get reverse swept here, they should still get first in the group, so Kazakhstan, they don't have to worry too much. They can kind of pick whatever and be pretty confident here. We are going to get the tapping players coming in for both teams. We're going to see Caustic for Ukraine. It's Zero Ice and my Angel Rasru in for Kazakhstan. Just waiting for Dench to hop into the lobby, and then we'll be getting into absolute banger roll pan map, this Nomad 2. It is, of course, 230 BPM stream stamina, and so it is a little bit slower than the DT2, a little bit more comfortable, for a lot of these players. This is another one of those maps that you really should see have at least one FC, if not two, if you want to get a point out of this one. It is one of the more comfortable maps in this pool for a lot of teams, and that's why we've seen it picked so much.
And surprisingly enough, no Dench for this pick. I don't believe we've seen him in any of the picks this matchup. Going to be relying on some roster depth here for Ukraine, with Crimea hopping in that 4th slot, as Kazakhstan trying to close this out. Again, one of those overlapping skill sets, perhaps an unnecessary risk. Ukraine trying to get their point in here for the matchup, but early accuracy shows some perhaps woes with the skill set. Crimea already finding that first and second break for the side of Ukraine. Plenty of map to go, but not looking great early.
Yeah, Crimea having a really rough time of this map early on. That's going to give Kazakhstan a pretty decent lead, and this is Ukraine's last chance at a point up against Kazakhstan. There goes Caustic as well. They do still have 2 FCs, but Kazakhstan has 3 and 1 big supporting combo from Zero Ice as well. We've seen Kazakhstan put up a couple FCs on this map before. They could do it again. Here we go into the tech section of No Mod 2. Now, this section doesn't seem that difficult. We've not generally seen too many misses on the tech, and everybody survives it. But at this point, Ukraine, they need to rely on misses from Kazakhstan. They can't afford any trades, and they need recoveries from Caustic and Crimea. It is going to be a miss from Zero Ice, but immediately traded back by Roman. That's another FC down for Ukraine. And Kazakhstan continue to smash their way through this group. Both teams, they see the scores at the break. Ukraine knows the damage, and they know that their odds of getting a point in this match are very quickly slipping away as Kazakhstan hold 3 FC strong into the last third of the map. Now, all they have to do is close it out in style. They're going to secure first place in this group, Hubba, and they are going to do so in a very dominant fashion.
Yeah, Roman's earlier break banjo, but it may not even matter with that secondary break from Kotsik coming through. And the build up for Kazakhstan is now, what a domination throughout this group in such an unexpected way. I mean, prior to the groups playing out, we were talking about how Ukraine, Kazakhstan would be the match to look out for, the strongest 2 teams of this group facing off, but seemingly not to be, as Turnifus and Common Sheik once again do what they do best. Double FC once more for the blue flag. And another improved score for Kazakhstan in this matchup by comparison. The sweep comes through. The payback for 2024 has come to fruition. And Ukraine need to find some rebuilding prior to their match in just a few hours against Peru.
Yeah, Ukraine have to be absolutely flawless from here on out. If they drop a single point against Peru, they will not be making it out of the group stage. They have to sweep, and that is so much pressure for any team, especially when you've already lost 0-2. And to be quite frank, Peru is looking solid. You generally expect them to get at least a point or 2. So final huge congratulations to Kazakhstan on once again securing first place in the group. They're going to be moving on to the round of 16 losers bracket. Of course, their opponents still yet to be determined. We've got to wait for the rest of the groups to play out. We do have another match still going on the B stream, Belgium versus Uruguay. Currently, Belgium is winning 3-2, and we're going to be back shortly on the A stream with a long-awaited match, France versus Spain. There is so much to play for still in that group. I think that could very well be the match of the week, but that is going to do it for us. I've been iFlame, joined by the lovely Hubba. Everybody, make sure to go eat your banners and go join us on the B stream for Uruguay Belgium. See you soon.
Bye-bye.